Bernard Hopkins Jr. is an American former professional boxer who competed from 1988 to 2016. He is one of the most successful boxers of the past 3 decades, having held multiple world championships in 2 weight classes, including the undisputed middleweight title from 2001 to 2005, and the lineal light heavyweight title from 2011 to 2012. Hopkins first became a world champion by winning the vacant IBF middleweight title in 1995. He would go on to compile 20 defenses against 17 opponents, with 19 wins as a result of his no-contest bout against Robert Allen. In 2001, Hopkins successfully unified the middleweight division by defeating Félix Trinidad to win the WBA, Super, WBC, Ring Magazine, and Lineal titles. A victory over Oscar De La Hoya for the WBO title in 2004 cemented Hopkins' status as undisputed champion, while also making him the first male boxer to simultaneously hold world titles by all 4 major boxing sanctioning bodies. In 2001, Hopkins was voted Fighter of the Year by the Ring Magazine and the Boxing Writers Association of America. In 2011, the Ring ranked Hopkins as 3rd on their list of the 10 best middleweight title holders of the last 50 years. As of April 2021, he is ranked by BoxRec as the 7th greatest boxer of all time, pound for pound. After losing the undisputed title to Jermaine Taylor in 2005, and failing to regain it in a rematch the same year, Hopkins achieved further success in 2006 when he moved up to light heavyweight, winning the EBO and Ring titles from Antonio Tarver at 41 years of age. 2 defenses of the Ring title were made before a loss to Joe Calzaghe in 2008. 3 years later, Hopkins defeated Jean Pascal for the WBC and lineal light heavyweight titles, as well as regaining the Ring title. This made Hopkins the oldest boxer in history to win a world championship, at the age of 46, breaking George Foreman's record set in 1994. Hopkins later broke his own record by winning the IBF light heavyweight title from Tavers Cloud in 2013, and again in 2014 when he won the WBA, Super, title from Biabit Shuminov, at ages 48 and 49, respectively. Nicknamed the Executioner, and later the Alien, Hopkins was known among observers for his longevity and ability to continue competing successfully at an advanced age. Widely considered one of the greatest boxers of the modern era, he was a highly strategic and defensive boxer known for carrying good speed and power along with counter-punching skills. He credits mastering the boxing fundamentals and a great defense for his longevity in the sport. He was also a very seasoned fighter, being able to take advantage of a wide variety of situations in the ring and implement rough and dirty tactics while fighting on the inside or in a clinch. In the last years of his active career, Hopkins also became a minority partner with Golden Boy Promotions, with which he still remains post-career. Born to Bernard Hopkins Sr. and his wife Shirley, Bernard grew up with his family in the Raymond Rosen Housing Project in Philadelphia. Hopkins turned to crime early in his life. By the age of 13 he was mugging people, and had been stabbed 3 times. At 17, Hopkins was sentenced to 18 years in Graterford Prison for 9 felonies. While in prison he witnessed the murder of another inmate in an argument over a pack of cigarettes, but also discovered his passion for boxing. After serving almost 5 years, Hopkins was released from prison in 1988. He then decided to use boxing as an escape from his previous life, and converted to Islam. While Hopkins was leaving the prison for the final time, the warden told him he'd see Hopkins again when you wind up back in here, to which Hopkins replied, "I ain't ever coming back here." Later, Hopkins attributed his personal discipline to his experiences and time spent in Graterford Prison. Hopkins completed his amateur career with a 95-4 record, although all of these fights took place in prison during a rehabilitation program, so they weren't official amateur bouts. Hopkins immediately joined the professional boxing ranks as a light heavyweight, losing his debut on October 11, 1988, in Atlantic City, New Jersey, to Clinton Mitchell. After a 16-month layoff, he resumed his career as a middleweight, winning a unanimous decision over Greg Page at the Blue Horizon on February 22, 1990. Between February 1990 and December 1992, Hopkins scored 21 wins without a loss. He won 16 of those fights by knockout, 12 coming in the first round. Hopkins met Roy Jones on May 22, 1993, for the vacant IBF middleweight title. Hopkins was outpointed throughout most of the fight, en route to losing a unanimous decision. All 3 judges scored the fight 116-112 for Jones. The IBF came again knocking at Hopkins' door on December 17 of that year, matching him with Segundo Mercado in Mercado's hometown of Quito, Ecuador. Mercado knocked Hopkins down twice before Hopkins rallied late, and earned a split draw. It has been argued that Hopkins was also not properly acclimated to the altitude of nearly 10,000 feet. The IBF called for an immediate rematch, and on April 29, 1995, Hopkins became a world champion with a 7th-round technical knockout victory in Landover, Maryland. In his first title defense he defeated Steve Frank, whom he stopped in 24 seconds. By the end of 2000, he had defended the IBF title 12 times without a loss, while beating such standouts as John David Jackson, Glenn Johnson, undefeated at the time, former champion Simon Brown, and knockout artist Antoine Eccles. The arrival of former welterweight and light middleweight champion Félix Trinidad into the middleweight ranks set off a series of unification fights between major middleweight title holders. The boxers involved in the tournament would be reigning IBF champion Bernard Hopkins, WBC champion Keith Holmes, WBA champion William Joppy, and Félix Trinidad. On April 14, 2001, Hopkins won a unanimous decision over WBC champion Keith Holmes in New York City. Trinidad, however, knocked out middleweight mainstay William Joppy in an impressive 5 rounds. This led many to believe that Félix Trinidad was simply too much, and too strong for Hopkins. On September 29, 2001, WBA champion Trinidad challenged Hopkins for middleweight unification in Madison Square Garden. The fight was originally scheduled for September 15, but the 9/11 attacks postponed it by 2 weeks. For the first time in many years, Hopkins was an underdog in the betting, which led the confident Hopkins to place a $100,000 bet on himself to win the bout. The $100,000 came from a sponsorship deal Hopkins had with online casino site Golden Palace. Hopkins even had the goldenpalace.com website displayed on his back for the fight. During promotion for the bout, Hopkins caused huge controversy by throwing the Puerto Rico flag on the floor in press conferences in both New York City and Puerto Rico, the latter conference leading to a riot in which Hopkins had to be run to safety from the angry mob. During the fight, Hopkins was on his way to a lopsided decision victory when, in the 12th and final round, he floored Trinidad. Referee Steve Smoger called a halt to the fight after Trinidad's father, who was also his trainer, entered the ring to stop the fight. It was the first loss of Trinidad's career, and it made Hopkins the first undisputed world middleweight champion since Marvin Hagler in 1987. The Ring magazine and the World Boxing Hall of Fame named Hopkins as the 2001 Fighter of the Year. He defended the undisputed title 6 times. Hopkins bested Carl Daniels on February 2, surpassing Carlos Monzon's division record of 14 defenses, 2002, by 10th-round technical knockout, Morad Hakkar on March 29, 2003, by 8th-round TKO, William Joppy on December 13, 2003, by unanimous decision, and Robert Allen on June 5, 2004, also by unanimous decision. In the highest-paying fight of his career, Hopkins fought 6th division title holder Oscar De La Hoya for the undisputed middleweight championship on September 18, 2004, in Las Vegas. They fought at a catch weight of 158 pounds, 2 pounds below the middleweight limit of 160 pounds. Hopkins won the bout by knockout in the 9th round with a left hook to the body, and thus became the first boxer ever to unify the titles of all 4 major sanctioning bodies. At the time of the stoppage, Hopkins was ahead on 2 of the scorecards, with De La Hoya ahead on the other. Hopkins earned a career high of $10 million, and De La Hoya made $30 million. In November 2004, De La Hoya invited Hopkins to join his boxing promotional firm, Golden Boy Promotions, as president of its new East Coast chapter. At 40 years old, an age at which most boxers are retired, Hopkins reached the middleweight record at the time of 19 consecutive title defenses on February 19, 2005, against ranked number 1 WBC contender Howard Eastman, the European middleweight champion. Hopkins dominated the fight from start to finish, winning 119-110, 117-111, and 116-112. In his next fight on July 16, 2005, Hopkins lost his undisputed middleweight championship to Jermaine Taylor via split decision. Hopkins started slowly but came on strong over the final 4 rounds. Many press row writers scored the fight for Hopkins. 5 months later, Hopkins and Taylor had a rematch, Taylor winning again, this time by unanimous decision. Following his 2 losses to Jermaine Taylor, Hopkins at 41 decided not to retire, and made the decision to jump 2 weight divisions to face off against the ring light heavyweight champion Antonio Tarver on June 10, 2006. Going into the fight, Tarver was a 3-1 favorite, and had been the first man ever to TKO Roy Jones Jr. Many now place Tarver among the sport's top competitors. He was constantly ranked in the P4P rankings. However, Bernard Hopkins picked up a lopsided unanimous decision, scoring 118-109 on all 3 judges' scorecards. Antonio Tarver also lost a $250,000 bet with Hopkins, after he failed to stop Hopkins in the first 6 rounds. On July 21, 2007, at the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino in Las Vegas, Hopkins defended the ring light heavyweight championship against former undisputed junior middleweight champion Wiki Wright. During the weigh-in, Hopkins shoved Wright with an open hand to the face, igniting a brawl between both fighters' entourages. Hopkins was fined $200,000 for instigating the brawl. Hopkins prevailed with the unanimous decision victory by scores of 117-111, 117-111, and 116-112. On April 19, 2008, at the Thomas and Mack Center in Las Vegas, Hopkins lost the ring light heavyweight title to Joe Calzaghe via split decision, 116-111, and 115-112 for Joe Calzaghe, 114-113 for Hopkins. Hopkins started the fight well, dropping Calzaghe in the first round, and using his ring savvy to confuse the challenger. Calzaghe did however quickly adapt to the style of Hopkins, and caught up in the middle to later rounds using his superior hand speed and output volume, leading to a split decision win for the Welshman. On October 18, 2008, Hopkins met middleweight champion Kelly Pavlik in a non-title fight at a catch weight of 170 pounds. Fans and pundits alike felt that Pavlik, known for his formidable punching power, would become the first man to knock Hopkins out. Pavlik was a 4-1 betting favorite heading into the contest. On the night of the fight, Hopkins turned back the clock to produce a performance he claimed to be the best of his career, winning a unanimous decision, 117-109, 119-106, 118-108, over the undefeated Pavlik. Hopkins prepared for this fight in the late summer heat at his second home, Danny Hawk's world-famous Normandy Gym in Miami Beach, Florida. During the Ricky Hatton vs. Manny Pacquiao media conferences before their fight on May 3, 2009, Hopkins stated he would be interested in a proposed fight with British super middleweight champion Carl Froch. On December 2, 2009, Bernard Hopkins fought in his home city of Philadelphia for the first time since 2003, beating Enrique Ornelas via 12-round unanimous decision, 120-109, 119-109, and 118-110. In what served as a tune-up bout for the 44-year-old Hopkins, who had not fought since his October 18, 2008 12-round upset victory over undisputed middleweight champion Kelly Pavlik. The bout was supposed to be a tune-up for a scheduled March 13, 2010, rematch with Roy Jones Jr. The rematch was later postponed as a result of Jones Jr. falling to a first-round technical knockout loss to Australian Danny Green. Hopkins, and old foe Roy Jones Jr., agreed to fight in a rematch on April 3, 2010, at the Mandalay Bay Events Center in Las Vegas. The two boxers fought again 17 years after their first bout in 1993. Hopkins defeated Jones by a unanimous decision in a 12-round bout marred by illegal blows, and a skirmish at the end of the 6th round involving ring entourage, the referee, and security guards. Judges Don Trella and Glenn Trowbridge scored it 117-110 for Hopkins, while Dave Moretti favored him 118-109. The Associated Press had it 119-108, scoring 11 of 12 rounds for Hopkins. He then challenged WBA heavyweight champion David Haye, who had successfully defended his title against John Ruiz. Following Hopkins' challenge, Haye ruled out the fight, stating Bernard was only looking for a payday. Hopkins later stated his intentions to fight Lucian Bute following Bute's third-round technical knockout victory over Edison Miranda. Golden Boy Promotions also tried to approach retired boxer Joe Calzaghe for a potential rematch in 2010, but Calzaghe, who stated he no longer had the appetite, turned the offer down. At 45 years old, Hopkins fought lineal/WBC/the ring light heavyweight champion Jean Pascal on December 18, 2010, at the Colisée Pepsi in Quebec City, Quebec, Canada. The bout ended in a majority draw decision. Judge Steve Morrow had it 114-112 for Hopkins, but was overruled by Claude Paquette, 113-113, and Daniel Vandewiel, 114-114. Following the controversy of the fight, WBC chairman Jose Suleiman sanctioned an immediate rematch. On May 21, 2011, at the Bell Centre in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, Hopkins defeated Pascal by unanimous decision to capture the lineal/WBC/the Ring Light Heavyweight Championships. The official scores were 115-113 from Guido Cavalieri of Italy, 116-112 from Judge Ray Danseco of the Philippines, and 115-114 from Thailand's Anakongtaongkam. With the win, Hopkins became the oldest man in the history of the sport to win a major world title, supplanting George Foreman, who had previously held the distinction after his knockout victory over Michael Moorer. Hopkins won at 46 years, 4 months, 6 days, while Foreman was 45 years, 10 months. After the bout, ESPN columnist Dan Raphael stated, "Bernard Hopkins already had lived several boxing lifetimes, but he was born yet again in Saturday's decision over Jean Pascal, becoming the oldest champion in history." Hopkins told the world of boxing that his next fight was going to be against former champion Chad Dawson. They fought on October 15, 2011. Hopkins lost via TKO for being unable to continue after injuring his shoulder when Dawson threw him off of his back. After an investigation by the WBC following a protest filed by Oscar De La Hoya, the WBC ruled that Dawson intentionally fouled Hopkins, and returned the belt to Hopkins. The Ring magazine also decided to continue to recognize Hopkins as their champion pending the California State Athletic Commission's ruling on a protest filed on behalf of Hopkins. Also on December 13, California State Athletic Commission, CSAC, has ruled that the decision will be overturned to a no contest upon official review, and the testimony of referee of the bout, Pat Russell. A rematch with Dawson was set for April 28, 2012. Hopkins lost the bout via majority decision. Hopkins would not fight again in 2012, making it the first calendar year since 1989 that he did not win a fight. Hopkins would make his return to the ring on March 9, 2013, at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, against IBF light heavyweight champion, and Ring No. 2 ranked light heavyweight, Davers Cloud. Hopkins broke his own record, becoming the oldest man in the history of the sport to win a major world boxing title, by defeating Cloud by unanimous decision. Hopkins defended the IBF light heavyweight championship against Karo Murat on October 26, 2013. The mandatory title defense was originally scheduled for July 13, 2013, but was later postponed due to visa issues for Murat. In the meantime, the IBF originally made Sergey Kovalev Hopkins' new mandatory challenger, but Kovalev instead faced, and beat then WBO champion Nathan Cleverly to win the title, so Murat was reinstated as the IBF mandatory challenger, and the bout was rescheduled for October 26, 2013. Hopkins won by unanimous decision with 2 scores of 119-108, and one of 117-110. Hopkins fought Biabit Shuminov in a championship unification bout on April 19, 2014, where Hopkins would be defending the IBF light heavyweight title, and Shuminov would be defending the WBA Super and EBA light heavyweight titles, the latter not on the line for Hopkins. On fight night, Hopkins knocked down Shuminov with a jab, and followed with a powerful overhand right that nailed Shuminov on the side of the head, and dropped him with just over 2 minutes left in the 11th round. Hopkins won by split decision with scores of 113-114, 116-111, and 116-111, becoming the oldest boxer in history to unify titles in a weight division. Shortly after, Sergey Kovalev defeated Blake Caparello in a second-round knockout on August 2, 2014, Hopkins announced he would face the former in a match where his WBA Super and IBF titles would be on the line against Kovalev's WBO title. The match was signed after neither fighter could secure a contest with WBC and lineal champion Adonis Stevenson. The fight took place at Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City on November 8, 2014, and was televised by HBO. This marked the end of a feud between Hopkins' promoter Golden Boy Promotions and the network, which saw HBO cut ties with Golden Boy fighters. In a one-sided fight, Hopkins was knocked down in the first round by Kovalev. Although he became the first fighter to take Kovalev past 8 rounds, Hopkins lost every single round on all 3 judges' scorecards, and took a 120-107, 120-107, 120-106 unanimous decision defeat, losing his titles. In 2015, Hopkins called out Carl Froch again, stating he would like to fight him in a farewell match, only for Froch to decline the offer, calling it a lose-lose situation. Hopkins also eyed James DeGale and Gennady Golovkin. Hopkins made an announcement confirming he wanted a final farewell fight before the end of 2016, which would be his first fight in over 2 years since losing to Kovalev in a lopsided unanimous decision. Hopkins also confirmed he would retire after this fight, whether it be at cruiserweight or light heavyweight, putting an end to his 28-year career. A deal was made in October for Hopkins to fight American boxer Joe Smith Jr., who last fought Fonfara in June, knocking him out in less than 3 minutes. The fight would be a HBO main event on December 17, 2016, at the Forum in Inglewood, California. Originally a co-feature with Salido vs. Muira until Salido injured his lower back and pulled out of the fight, making the Hopkins farewell the sole main event of the card. Later it was confirmed that another co-feature fight has been signed, as Oleksandr Usyk would be defending his WBO cruiserweight title against Tabiso Mchunu. Both boxers weighed in at 174 pounds. Hopkins did not contact trainer Nazem Richardson to train him for his final bout, instead having Kovalev's trainer John David Jackson, a former boxer whom Hopkins defeated in 1997, train him. On fight night, in front of a 6,513 crowd, Hopkins lost to Smith via TKO when he was knocked out of the ring in the 8th round, and failed to make it back into the ring as referee Jack Rice made a 20 count. Smith Jr. outboxed Hopkins through most of the first 7 rounds, then, in the 8th round, Smith caught Hopkins in the corner, and landed 5 shots to the head that knocked him out of the ring. Hopkins said he was hurt, and couldn't get back in the ring. He insisted that he had been pushed out of the ring, but replays showed it was not a push. Hopkins said to HBO in the post-fight interview, "He shoved me out of the ring. My ankle got twisted when I fell out of the ring. I couldn't stand on my feet. If I wouldn't have been pushed out of the ring, I believe he was starting to fade. I can't believe they gave him a TKO. They can call it a no contest but not a loss. The momentum from his body pushed me. I went out like a soldier. I'm not in a denial." Hopkins sat down with HBO's Max Kellerman in the locker room after the fight, and confirmed this would be his final fight. Smith Jr. retained his WBC International Light Heavyweight title. Hopkins' reported purse was $800,000, compared to Smith's $140,000. According to Ring TV, the fight averaged 934,000 viewers, peaking at 1.035 meters on HBO. Hopkins was coached by Philadelphia-based English Bowie Fisher from 1989 until their split in 2002, which resulted in Fisher taking Hopkins to court, claiming he was underpaid by $255,000. They reunited in 2003, but split again in 2005, again with Fisher claiming to be underpaid, this time to the tune of $200,000. Nazem Richardson, Fisher's long-term assistant, took over as Hopkins' head coach from 2005. Fisher won the Eddie Futch John F.X. Condon Award, awarded by the Boxing Writers Association of America, for Trainer of the Year in 2001. He died aged 83 in June 2011. Richardson died in July 2020. On December 7, 2007, Hopkins and Calzaghe met face-to-face in the media room set up for the Floyd Mayweather Jr. vs. Ricky Hatton fight. Hopkins and Calzaghe began shouting insults and taunting each other, with Hopkins shouting, "You're not even in my league. I would never let a white boy beat me. I would never lose to a white boy. I couldn't go back to the projects if I let a white boy beat me." Hopkins would later explain his comments, saying that it was not meant to be taken as a racial slur or a reflection of his feelings on white fighters, but simply said to create some hype for his fight with Calzaghe. On January 23, 2008, the fight was officially announced to take place on April 19, 2008, at the Thomas and Mack Center in Las Vegas. Hopkins lost the fight. In late 2010, Hopkins suggested that African-American fighters who possessed what he described as a slick inner-city style of fighting would be successful against Filipino boxer Manny Pacquiao. "Maybe I'm biased because I'm black, but I think that this is what is said at people's homes, and around the dinner table among black boxing fans and fighters. Most of them won't say it in public, because they're not being real, and they don't have the balls to say it. but I do think that a fighter like the Ray Leonards or anyone like that would beat a guy like Pacquiao, if they come with their game. Listen, this ain't a racial thing, but then again, maybe it is. But the style that is embedded in most of us black fighters, that style could be a problem to any other style of fighting. On May 11, 2011, Hopkins questioned Minnesota Vikings quarterback Donovan McNabb's racial credentials in a Philadelphia Daily News Online article. Marcus Hayes of the Philadelphia Inquirer reported that according to Hopkins, McNabb had a privileged childhood in suburban Chicago, and, as a result, is not black enough or tough enough, at least compared with, say, himself, Michael Vick, and Terrell Owens. Hopkins said, he's got a suntan. That's all. McNabb is the guy in the house, while everybody else is on the field. He's the one who got the extra coat. The extra servings. He thought he was one of them. In late 2013 he again suggested that African Americans possess a slick style of boxing which is superior to other styles, presumably practiced by non-African Americans. The great Sugar Ray Leonard, right now, if he was boxing, the way that they want you to fight, the people that pull the strings of the puppet, he would be boring today. Ray Robinson, the great Robinson, would be boring today, because the feeders of the people that buy entertainment. They're being fed that if they duck, don't buy it. If they're slick, and they beat their opponent 9 out of the 12 rounds, and the guy just can't hit him because they were slick and smart enough to hit and not get hit, he's not crowd pleasing, he don't sell tickets. Because they done fed the followers, and they done fed that to the customers. The customers will drink anything that you give them if it's promoted right, but when you take away the skill, and you take away the slick, and you take away the boxing ability, and say that's not entertaining, or that's not entertainment, then, to me, it's like trying to erase a culture that you know has dominated the sport way back then where you were slick. And I'm talking about black fighters. Yes, I said it, said Hopkins. Hopkins has a professional record of 67 fights, with 55 wins, 8 losses, 2 draws, and 2 no contests.